Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ, presented by Jeep. There is only one. Here's your notable injuries to monitor as we head into this week of NFL action. You know what? Going to break, I said some managers, fantasy managers, have changed their logo to the blue tent. Jordan is one of those.
That is me.
Jordan has some names on this list.
Don't
Got a few on this list. Yeah.
Just a few. Half
Trey
of it.
McBride added this hour. We gave you that. This just in. He's out with a concussion for this week. All right, so as you get ready to set these lineups this week or perhaps make a last-minute waiver move, let's get some guidance from senior fantasy expert Jamey Eisenberg. Jamey, let's start with this Trey McBride news, which we just got. He's been ruled out with a concussion here. So if you're a guy that's got Trey McBride on your roster, I mean, he's top 5 among tight ends, top 9 amongst just receiving players. What are you doing this week to address this?
The first place I would actually go look is Dalton Schultz for the Texans. It sounds like Tank Dell is not going to play, dealing with the rib injury. He's got a great matchup against the Jaguars. Now, he's been bad so far this season, but you understand why. They bring in Stephon Diggs. Dell is back healthy. Nico Collins is there. So with a 3-headed receiving core, it's difficult for Schultz to get targets. Now you remove one of those guys, and Schultz will have a bigger opportunity here to play well. I don't necessarily think you want to go to the backup tight end for the Cardinals. You could be looking at Sam Laporta being out for the Lions, and Brock Wright's in a pretty good situation as the backup tight end for Detroit. Mike Gesicki is still out there in some leagues. He's coming off a decent game, not the huge game that we saw in week 2 because T. Higgins did return. Cole Kmet may still be out there in some leagues, waiting to find out the status of all the Bears wide receivers. But the first place I would actually go look, though, is Houston with Dalton Schultz with that matchup with Tank Dell not expected to play.
So with McBride out, Jamey, what's the uptick for guys like Michael Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler Murray in this offense?
I don't think the ceiling can get much higher for Marvin Harrison because he's already a must-start guy, and the matchup is absolutely fantastic. The Commanders are #1 in most fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers, and you're looking at a situation where they've already given up 9 touchdowns to the position in 3 weeks. So now you have some sleeper appeal with Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch. Wilson's coming off his best game of the season, 8 catches, 64 yards last week against Detroit, a similar type of matchup. So I'm in the middle of writing my DFS story for Sportsline. Wilson's going to be in a lot of DFS lineups for me, and if he's available on your waiver wire, go pick him up as a #3 receiver for this week because the matchup is fantastic. All
right, so no Trey McBride for the Cardinals this week. You can address that through perhaps Dalton Schultz. Moving along, Green Bay head coach Matt LaFleur has said we'll see about Jordan Love's status for week 4. With Malik Willis performing so well, Jamey, is there an expectation that maybe this takes another week and just kind of sit with Love for now?
I mean, obviously the Packers have long-term goals. So they're not going to rush Jordan Love out there in a matchup where you know he's going to get blitzed a lot by this Vikings defense if he's not 100% and ready to play. It's a huge game, a lot of NFC North implications, not of NFC playoff implications because of how these two teams have started and where they both now expect to be. So if you don't have Jordan Love out there, it really downgrades the receiving core for the Packers because Malik Willis is not going to throw at the same level that Jordan Love has done. Willis has played great, gotten them the 2 wins, but he's just not the same level of passer. So if Jordan Love returns, he becomes a borderline must-start quarterback just based on his upside. But the receiving core really changes dramatically based on who's playing. So if Willis is in, Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, they're almost certainly on your bench. Love returns, then we get #3 caliber wide receivers for all 3 of those guys. That's how much they change if Jordan Love is back there.
All right, another QB injury to worry about is in L.A. Justin Herbert is progressing through the ankle injury that he has. Herbert is one of many banged-up Chargers for this one. Joey Bosa also dealing with injuries. What are you doing with Herbert this week, and by extension, perhaps even running back J.K. Dobbins?
Yeah, I think for Herbert, just because of how poorly he's been as a fantasy quarterback, and we kind of expected this going into the season, that they were going to be a run-heavy team, and you saw the receiving core and all the changes that they went through, that Herbert wasn't going to be a great fantasy quarterback. So the fact that he's at less than 100%, he should only be of consideration in 2 quarterback and super flex leagues. 1 quarterback leagues, there are much better options. Andy Dalton, for example, is somebody I would start over Justin Herbert. For the receivers, if there is no Herbert, you're almost, again, hands off of guys like Quentin Johnston and Ladd McConkey, borderline starters to begin with in 3 receiver leagues. Josh Palmer's coming back after not playing last week, so we'll see how healthy he is. But I wouldn't trust any of these guys in terms of must-start options. For Dobbins, he's been amazing, but he was amazing in the first 2 games, and then he comes back last week in a tough matchup, and he struggles. this is going to be a tough matchup as well. The Chiefs have been very good against opposing running backs. And it's not just Joe Alt, Jeremy. It's also Rashawn Slater. So both tackles are banged up on the offensive line. So if you have a quarterback less than 100%, an offensive line that's less than 100%, and a run defense that's really good, J.K. Dobbins is a flex at best for me this week.
Wow, looks like I'm staying away from some of my Chargers guys this week. All right, we have wide receiver problems in Philly. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith absent from practice on Thursday. They travel to Tampa Bay this weekend. And Jamey, missing Thursday practice from a fantasy standpoint is usually not a great sign, is it?
And they got their bye week coming up soon as well, so you wonder if they're just going to make sure A.J. Brown's 100% with that hamstring injury. And the fact that Devontae Smith has not cleared the concussion protocol already probably suggests that both guys are going to be out. But obviously something to keep an eye on with Friday's injury report. When you look at this, it's Jalen Hurts is still a top 10 quarterback because I think he'll have to rely on his legs a little bit more. And he will get enough production out of Dallas Goedert, who's my #1 tight end this week. You saw last week, 11 targets, 10 catches, 170 yards. He should be a monster once again because anytime somebody's missing from the trio, the other two guys tend to step up. Well, now two guys are missing, and so Goddard should be clearly a focal point of the passing attack, and we'll probably see Saquon Barkley's numbers in the passing game uptick as well, although it's a tough rushing matchup for him because Vita Vea is still good. I don't care. I'm still starting Barkley no matter what. The question is, can you trust any of the other guys in the receiving core? The one guy in a desperate situation would probably be Jahan Dotson just because we've seen some flashes from him in the past, but really this is such an inconsistent and really uninspiring group. But they did go make the trade to get Dotson. Hopefully this is his opportunity to step up like we saw Jawan Jennings last week. I don't expect that by any means, but this is his chance now to shine, so hopefully he does so.
Yeah, Jordan pumping her fist, Dallas Goedert, one of her healthy actual players.
Need it.
So, yeah. We mentioned the Chiefs are going to face the Chargers this week. We talked about how tough that matchup is from the Chargers standpoint. This week, the defending champs turning back the clock by adding Kareem Hunt to the 53-man active roster. I stashed Hunt when they signed him to a practice squad a couple weeks ago in one of my deeper leagues. Jamey, is he worth a start this week?
I wouldn't start him this week. You know, I think you did the right thing. You stashed him, and you probably stash him one more week. Let's see what Carson Steele does again. He was good. He wasn't great in the first game without Isaiah Pacheco, 17 carries, over 70 yards rushing, minimal work in the passing game. You wonder where the touches are going to come from. Are they going to come from Steele, or are they going to come from Samaje Perine, who had 6 carries, did a little bit more in the passing game than Steele did last week? So I think they're just going to work Hunt in. Look, he's 29 years old. He did not look good last year in his return to Cleveland. He did a lot near the goal line, so that could be an option for him. But really, I think that's what they were hoping for Carson Steele this season, to be their goal line option behind Isaiah Pacheco. They're still trying to figure things out. Again, Steele is a converted fullback, so he's not, I think, the long-term answer that they're looking for. And let's just keep this in mind. If you have an IR spot, go pick up Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who could return off the NFI list next week, and he may be their best running back moving forward. So I think what you did is the right approach for most fantasy managers. Pick up Hunt where he's still available, stash him to see what happens, but please don't start him this week because I still think Carson Steele is the best running back for the Chiefs.
Speaking of stashes, Carolina got a massive win last week, both on the board and psychologically. Canadian Chuba Hubbard has been their RB1 by leaps and bounds, but rookie running back Jonathan Brooks is in the final stages of his rehab. What's your strategy regarding Brooks at this point, Jamey?
Well, you got to be so excited about Jonathan Brooks right now because the first 2 games, it looked like, oh, my God, why did I draft this guy? Because this offense is going to be absolutely miserable. And then you get the Week 3 game with Andy Dalton and with Chuba Hubbard, where he had 5 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown, had over 25 fantasy points. And I think he's going to have another huge game this week. He's obviously my start of the week in this matchup against Cincinnati. They've been so bad against opposing running backs. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Now, the flip side of that, being excited about Jonathan Brooks, is if Chuba Hubbard still does this one more game, he's probably not just going to be relegated to the bench and we're just going to see all of Jonathan Brooks. So they're probably going to ease him in a little bit, which makes sense, you know, for a guy as talented as he is coming off the torn ACL. But eventually Brooks will take over this backfield, whether it's 60-40, 80-20, however it shakes out. He's going to be the best running back for Carolina because I do think this offense is going to head in the right direction because they figured out their quarterback, at least for the short term. So Andy Dalton is great right now for the Panthers. The run game should be great for the Panthers for this week. And Jonathan Brooks' arrow is definitely pointing up because of the quarterback change that they made in Carolina.
He is our senior fantasy expert, Jamey Eisenberg, joining us to get us all set for the weekend, dealing with injuries and nips and knocks here and there, and deciding who to start and sit. And, of course, you can get more of that advice over on Fantasy Football Today. Jamey and the guys, of course, giving you all the information that you need, the stuff that they're getting on an hourly basis as we head towards this weekend's action. You can download and follow Fantasy Football Today wherever you get your pods, or scan that QR code. Listen to the latest Start Sit episode right now.